Hey everyone, welcome to the Tattoos with Intention podcast, which is now presented to you by the Tattoo Pathway Research and Education Institute. The podcast is dedicated to unraveling the profound and transformative dimensions of tattooing, moving beyond the surface of the art and exploring its role as a sacred and lifelong practice. It's a collaborative effort between professionals, researchers, and spiritual guides. Tattoos with Intention podcast is rooted in elevating the cultural and spiritual significance of tattooing within the contemporary world for the modern human. If you enjoy this podcast or you find any value in it, please give us a follow, give us a share. And also if you want to find out what educational opportunities we have at Tattoo Pathway for people that are seeking guidance around receiving tattoos or professional development for artists or therapists, just check out our website, tattoopathway.com. So today's episode is a powerful conversation between Taylor, the lead researcher at Tattoo Pathway, and Dr. Daniel Franz, a licensed mental health counselor, a certified addiction specialist, and an expert in Viktor Frankl's Logotherapy. Dr. Dan is also the host of the Meaning Project podcast, which I was a guest on last year. So together they delve into the philosophy behind Logotherapy. They explore its relevance to one of our core principles at Tattoo Pathway, which is the connection between living a meaningful life and having meaningful tattoos. So through themes of self-responsibility, resilience, and self-transcendence, Dr. Dan offers guidance on how meaning can shape our lives and tattoo experiences alike. Their dialogue also touches on the power of intentional choices, something we talk about a lot at Tattoo Pathway. They talk about navigating inattention, building community, while sharing practical tools for integrating meaning into everyday life. So whether you're navigating personal challenges or you're just curious about how tattoos reflect your inner growth, you're going to find inspiration and valuable insights in this conversation. So I do hope you enjoy.
I would really like today to draw from your wisdom and expertise in logotherapy and meaning and as a psychotherapist to explore living a meaningful life and grounding that in some of the work we do at Tattoo Pathway. We have this phrase, if you want to have meaningful tattoos, you need to be living a meaningful life. And, it kind of seems common sense and obvious when you first sit with that. But I know for myself, for many, many years, I certainly did not have that front of mind when I was approaching my tattoos. It got me questioning, or I guess it led me into questioning more deeply, what is a meaningful life? How do I know if I'm living a meaningful life? What is the guidance towards living a meaningful life? And so I'm really hoping we can explore that latter part of the phrase, living a meaningful life. So thank you so much for joining us to guide us through that conversation.
Well, it's my absolute honor. I'm so excited to be with you today. And if you've listened to any of my podcasts, how passionate I am about this and how much I love just sharing this message from Dr. Frankl and all of the research and students and logotherapists after him, and this kind of idea we've put together. As I've said many times, I just find it my purpose, my meaning is to share this with more people and in bigger ways. So thank you for giving me the honor to share with your audience. I'm so excited to just see where it goes.
Mutual excitement. Maybe just to start us off, could you please introduce us to what logotherapy is? And I've heard you also call it logo philosophy.
Right. So a few other logo therapists, logo people, I think you've also heard me call them logo nerds, people into the idea of logotherapy. We've added so many words to it because it's not just a therapy. And we don't want people to be intimidated thinking, oh, I need to be a psychologist or a counselor or a psychotherapist. But this way of living definitely can work, should work for everybody, because I think you might agree. What I've seen though is we live in a time where economics and culture and society seems to rob us from meaning from time to time. And we maybe we lose that sense of meaning in consumerism, in the smartphone scrolling, in the social media world. And so to return to that isn't just about therapy, but it is a philosophy of life, I believe. And so its origins are with Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was a student of Sigmund Freud, of Alfred Adler. He was a precocious young man. At the age of 17, he was corresponding with the great Sigmund Freud at that time, the founder of many areas of modern psychology. And he had these ideas that he would challenge Freud on. And he'd say, with all due respect, Dr. Freud, you say that human beings are in search of pleasure. Freud's student Alfred Adler said human beings are in search of power. And Viktor Frankl said, I think human beings are in search of meaning. And in the early 1900s in Vienna, Austria, he started to formulate these ideas in university. He went on to become multiple degrees, a physician, a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and kind of a philosopher. And so he started to put these ideas together that human beings are in search of meaning. And when we find that meaning in life, we're fulfilled, and that combats depression and anxiety. In the world he lived in after World War I, he really had to put these ideas to work. And he found that in a time when suicide was rampant in his country, his ideas really helped. And then later on, as he was a successful physician and clinician, the Nazis invade Austria, and he was given a stay for a while. He was, a Jewish citizen, but because he was a physician, they let him work for a while. But eventually, he wound up in the concentration camps, multiple concentration camps of World War II, and had to actually put these ideas to work for himself to survive. One of his famous stories is that as he is in line to go into the concentration camp, he actually had the notes for one of his famous books in his pocket. And they took that from him, of course. They took everything from him. And he spent a lot of time trying to take those notes down. And he credits these ideas with some of what helped keep him alive, knowing that he wanted to share this with the world and expand upon it.
That's a very powerful story that Viktor Frankl has. And I also think, what a test ground to be practicing your model of living, and particularly around meaning, being in such challenging, you could call dire circumstances, to still be able to find that meaning is pretty incredible, actually, and models to us, I think, in our lives that we can also find that meaning in times of challenge, suffering, discomfort. It's available to us.
One of my favorite quotes that sticks with me is, he says, life has meaning under all circumstances, even the most miserable. And so, when I'm struggling with raising young adult daughters or the finances of modern world or business practices, I can reflect on that idea and the fact that that was born out of some of the worst times in modern human history, out of the Nazi concentration camps. If these ideas worked for him back then, who am I to say, well, that can't work for me. Life is meaningless. It's not. There's a lot of hope in these ideas.
There is a lot of hope. And I think what I really love about, from when I read Man's Search for Meaning, and I've been listening to your podcast on the Meaning Project, what I really love about this model is that I feel it has a deep reverence and compassion for the human experience, in that it doesn't deny that human suffering is an inevitable part of our experience. And, that can be unforeseen circumstances, that can be our journey of transformation and growth, but it's woven in there. But equally, what I really love about it is that self-responsibility is this core pillar of logotherapy, this idea that we have the capacity and ability and freedom, I guess, to make choices to access that meaning. And I would really love if you could talk a little bit more about that self-responsibility piece of logotherapy and why it actually is so essential to our path of meaning.
He writes prolifically about that idea. One of my favorite statements he made, I believe he was lecturing some American students He said, you Americans have this Statue of Liberty on your East Coast, and it needs to be offset with the Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. And there's actually a movement. I just found out, I was doing some research just recently, just a few weeks ago. There was a movement to have that statue built, I believe, in either San Francisco, somewhere on the California coastline. And unfortunately, red tape in the United States is very thick, and it wasn't going to work. So the governor of our state of Utah said, you know what? You can put it here. So there is a plan to build the Statue of Responsibility in Utah here in the United States. But Viktor Frankl says that that human beings are able to respond to their situation. We can't always choose the situation. We can't choose the variables that we're born in. We can't choose where we live. We can't always choose everything around us, but we can choose our response. We are able to respond. And in taking responsible action, we find meaning in that ability to choose. When we can choose meaningfully, I often tell the people I work with, we are confronted with so many choices on a daily basis. I believe, I might get this number wrong. Last time I looked was a few months ago. I believe we are confronted with over 2,000 choices an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just, the number is mind boggling, from little things to big things, to what we're going to eat from lunch, to what we're going to watch on TV. And each one of those choices, I believe, can be a meaningful choice. We can either choose to sit on the couch and watch one more episode of whatever Netflix show we're watching, or we can get up and exercise, spend time with our family, read a book, go outside, do just about anything. But every choice we have has the opportunity, the responsibility to choose meaningfully. And that's part of living a meaningful life, is when we string these responsible choices together, well, we're finding meaning in a lot of opportunities. And when we don't choose responsibly or choose meaningfully, well, as he says, each one of these decisions, each one of these potential moments, we only get to live once. And each time we make a choice, the potential for that moment to be meaningful or not is left in the distance. So when we choose meaningfully, we stack up these meaningful times. And well, again, that's kind of the pathway to a meaningful life. It's no big grandiose plan of what's out there. What do I need to do next week or next year to have a meaningful life? It's every decision we make of every moment of every day.
Yeah, I really like that, because it's bringing it, I guess that's returning to what you were sharing around it not just being psychotherapy or psychology, it's a philosophy, it's a way of living. And self-responsibility is actually our first pillar at Tattoo Pathway. And one of the ways we describe that, which I feel really resonates with what you're saying, you kind of fleshed it out and pulled it out a little bit more, is taking responsibility for who you are and where you're going. And, in some ways it's a process of honest reflection, like, knowing where you've come from to get to where you are, but also that intentional action. We do have that choice in the direction that we're going. And I also think in our lives and in tattoo processes, we do come into contact with those experiences that are challenging. And I'd really love to hear from you. How are those challenges, or how do we turn those challenges and tragedies into triumph, into growth?
Beautiful question. How do we turn suffering into growth? Again, we have a variety of opportunities to do that. Dr. Frankl talks about the tragic triad of pain, guilt, and death. The three things we'll all go through in life. No human being can escape pain, guilt, and death, right? We're all terminal here. We're all going to die. Nobody, well, I don't know, who knows? Maybe somebody discovers the fountain of youth and eternal life, but it would make life a little boring if they did. We all will feel pain. We'll all struggle with suffering. We all hurt other people. We hurt each other. But in each one of those tragedies is the opportunity. In that guilt, I tell a lot of people I work with, guilt can be a very positive emotion when we allow it to change our behavior. If we let guilt sit and we ruminate and reminisce about what a poor decision we made, or why did I hurt that person? That guilt becomes shame, and that shame can become toxic. It can be damaging to the person. But if we allow that guilt to bring pause and to think and to take responsibility, to take responsible action, maybe it means to make amends or to apologize or to just to change our behavior so we don't go on hurting people. Right? We've turned that guilt into something positive. When it comes to our own pain, we can do things to alleviate that. We can change it, but sometimes we can't. Sometimes our suffering in terms of terminal illness, whether it's our own illness or the illness of those we love, difficult family situations, we can't always change it, but we can choose our attitude towards it. We can choose an attitude of resilience, of helping, of healing, and to try to make the situation better. That's an opportunity for meaning as well. And then finally, when it comes to death, again, we're not going to escape this life. And that's kind of what makes it sweet. And recognizing we're only given a short amount of time to accomplish amazing things, we should take every day to be able to do just a little bit of that, like we're doing here today at a very early time in the morning for you, right? To give of yourself, to share with other people, so that you make a little mark in today, so that throughout the days of your life that you're doing something, right? Something meaningful, something helpful, something self-transcendent to bring joy, bring peace, bring growth, bring knowledge, bring meaning to others.
The word that you just said that really stood out to me, and I think was woven through all of those three areas, was self-transcendence. And I think that's another thing I really like about Viktor Frankl's model, is that this idea of connection to something greater than ourselves and our, some may call it our spirit or our soul or our inner calling, is really central to finding meaning. And I'd love to hear a bit more from you. Yeah, just to unpack that self-transcendence bit a little bit more.
Sure. One of my favorite topics. Somewhere in the past few generations, past few decades, we've developed this idea, and I've been thinking a lot about this and talking a lot about it in the past few weeks. Maybe it's because of the holidays, but this idea of self-care and me time and taking care of myself. And for some reason recently that just hit me. I think the therapist world is really big on that. We talk a lot about self-care, that we do so much in our jobs and our businesses to help others and to take care of others. We have to take care of ourselves. And one day it just struck me, what does that really mean? Because according to logotherapy, according to logo philosophy, the greatest opportunity to discover meaning in our lives is in service of others, in service of something greater than ourselves, right? We find meaning through our experiences in life. We find meaning in our creativity, in our attitudes. But one of the greatest ways to discover meaning is through self-transcendence, service to others. And I feel as though my culture, the therapist culture, maybe the American culture, maybe it's our worldwide culture of, well, I have to take care of me, has something to do with our mental health crisis, our rates of mental illness, that if we step back and actually try to take care of each other, and there's a great book by an author named Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, called The Happiness Hypothesis. And I was just reading that recently, and he talks about throughout human history, we've been very communal, and that seemed to help us thrive and survive. But as we became more individualistic, as we very much are here in the United States, we suffered, we struggled, we became less healthy. So this idea of self-transcendence, I believe, goes beyond just Viktor Frankl and logotherapy. I believe it's something we really need to be looking at as a human race, that when we are so focused on ourselves and the I, well, it's not working. But when we give to each other, when we spend time in community, when we spend time sharing in service to others, we feel better. I can't remember who said it, but one of my favorite sayings, it was another podcast, was helping other people is one of the most selfish things you can do, because it feels good. It helps you and it helps the other person. But somewhere along the line, we started missing that.
I think the community piece, or like things actually that you've just touched on, our modern context, particularly in the Western world, of that individualistic consumerist culture where we're fragmented and isolated from one another, I can totally see how that is leading or contributing to this idea of a meaning crisis, or, a disconnect from meaning in our own lives, because there's so much power in sharing our experiences and learning from one another and being witnessed and being seen, but also witnessing and seeing each other. And I think built into that is exactly what you were talking about, being in service to one another can really, there's like significance to it. There's purpose to it. It makes sense to me, and it matters. And there are some words that I've been listening to John Viveki on meaning that he talks about are really important for meaning, is like having it, making sense, it being significant, it having purpose, and it connecting to something beyond ourselves. And so that idea of self-transcendence kind of seems to encapsulate all of those areas, which is just so powerful and something we can, I guess, here's a question. What are some practical ways that people can bring that into their everyday life? Because maybe some people are like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not in a service career. How do I bring self-transcendence into my life?
Great question. It can start as soon as that alarm goes off, right? If you wake up by an alarm, some of us wake up by dogs or children or other ways, which is just as meaningful, actually. I've heard many people talk about this, that first moment that we open our eyes and bring in just a little bit of consciousness. Most of us, many of us, would rather, especially here where it is currently 3 degrees outside and it's still cold inside, right? Most of us just want to pull those covers back over and say, no, not right now. There's this opportunity for a heroic moment, for a self-transcendent moment, to get up, to not look at your phone, to turn the alarm off if it's on your phone, and go and do something for somebody else. Go. And for me, and it's kind of funny, this may sound very, very simple, very small, but I've actually had to coach a lot of men on this idea. If you're a coffee drinker, if there are coffee drinkers in your family, you can either make yourself a cup of coffee or you can make a pot of coffee for the people in your home. And when they wake up and debate whether or not they want to pull those covers back over, they'll say, oh, somebody made coffee. I can get up now, right? It's just such a simple act, but there have actually been men in my practice who say, I'm not going to do that. I said, that can be one of the most loving things you do. For me personally, it really is when the dog barks at either 4:30 or 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I try to get myself up and moving quickly to get her outside so she doesn't disturb anybody else. Now, I may grumble and I may see things like, it'd be nice if somebody else would do this once in a while, but I get past that, because when you're outside in 3 degrees, you have to get past that pretty quickly. I think, making breakfast for others in the morning, just being cheerful in the morning, man, not everybody wakes up. Not everybody's a morning person, but you can pretend, you can take responsible action and fake it and try to be cheerful to those others waking up. But I think that goes throughout the day too. Just something as simple as smiling at other people as you walk down the sidewalk or as you walk into your office building, whether it's the people you meet that you work with or complete strangers or the people closest to you in your own home. Just trying to be peaceful, loving, kind. It's a very self-transcendent act.
Yeah. And again, what I really like about this, it's you use the phrase simple, but it's almost these like tiny steps of practice that all add up to, one of the words that I would use is living intentionally. Like they all add up because it's responsible choice that you're taking, but also to having meaning. And yeah, I just think it's so useful to have that framing of like, it doesn't have to be this big grand plan. And I actually experienced that coming into 2025. I was like, woohoo, new year, wrote all my goals out, 3 pages, physical goals, well-being goals, mental health goals. And actually, to your point, so many of them were focused on the self-care, me, I, that even just after a few weeks of January, it didn't have that radical shift on, wow, I'm living a meaningful life. It just felt like more actions, more noise. And yeah, I really like grounding our everyday and our practice in that intentional choices of self-transcendence to create meaning. I think that's really helpful.
It really, it can be simple. As you said, meaning is not some grandiose something else that we have to focus on too excessively. It is simple actions, moment to moment, day to day. We need to take care of ourselves and our physical being, our mental, emotional, spiritual health. But when we take care of others, when we step outside ourselves to help others, we are taking care of ourselves.
I have a question related to the taking care of our emotional, mental, spiritual well-being. And it's also looping into us mentioning the current model of, I guess, psychotherapy and spiritual spaces and personal development, is that I feel there's this focus on homeostasis, equilibrium, inner peace. And if we don't have that, then there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with our lives. And that can lead to shame, or that can lead to feeling stuck or not making movement. And I've come into contact to this in many times of my life. Here I am, but I want to be there. Is there something wrong with that? And I've heard Viktor Frankl and yourself refer to this as a healthy inattention. And so I would love, 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 love for you to explain that to us. And maybe why is that inner tension actually healthy, and how does it contribute towards a meaningful life?
Truly one of my favorite topics. So I apologize to your audience if I get too loud or too fast, too passionate about this, because it truly is. I believe this is probably the core of a lot of the therapy that I do. And when I read the first time years ago, man, search for meaning, and I read that part, I was like, that that just works for me, because that's what I've always believed in different ways. But Frankl just puts it in such, again, simple words. This idea, well, existential dynamics is not really a simple phrase, but the idea that we we know where we are, and in a healthy individual, we are constantly called to something more. You gave a great example with your New Year's resolutions, right? Worldwide, most of us around that time of year are sitting back thinking, what was last year like? What do I want to do with next year? And that's just a great example of these existential dynamics, this calling that we have to be better, to be greater. Frankl calls it becoming. I love that idea. We should always becoming something else. We should always work on becoming better. I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, don't try to be better than others. Just try to be better than yourself every day. And I think that's a beautiful idea, that when we have this tension, when we can sit in this tension of, okay, I know I'm here, but I know I want to do something. I want to do something for myself. I want to become more healthy. I want to help my family. I want to help others. I want to grow this podcast, Tattoo Pathways. I want to reach out, but I'm not sure how I want to do it. That's awesome. Because if we always knew what the answer was, well, life would be pretty boring. We would just go about like little robots doing these things. But trying to figure it out, sitting in that liminal space of not knowing, is an opportunity for growth, striving, trying to reach that, and sometimes failing. I've said many times, failure can be a beautiful thing because it proves that you're trying, but it also is the universe's way of saying, oh, you didn't try hard enough or not quite right enough. Go back and give it a try again. But it's proof that we're alive. We can't always succeed in everything we do. That's impossible. We still have to try. And that existential tension of continuing to grow, to move forward, to become, to evolve is very healthy. But as you said, we live in a world today that says, no, you should strive for equilibrium. If
Mm.
you feel too happy or too sad or too tense or too whatever, we have a pill for that and we can cure that. And most people will tell you, I've seen this a lot in the past decade. When you take those magic pills to get rid of the highs and lows in life, that's exactly what it does. Most people tell you, I just feel numb. I
Mm.
miss that striving. I miss the ups and downs of human life and emotion. It's ironic that we're talking about this. I saw, I don't know, horrific, sad. Well, I was on my exercise bike this morning, so it helped me ride faster because I was so frustrated with it. It was an advertisement for another pill, but this pill was meant to cure the symptoms of the first pill you took for your depression or anxiety. It was a pill for what we call tardive dyskinesia. Some antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, when prescribed when they don't fit with the person's chemical makeup, cause twitching and shaking and things like this. But rather than coming off the first pill, we're just going to create another pill to relieve the symptoms so you can stay on your pill. And in the end, I love what you said earlier, right? And I'm not even sure you said this, but you should definitely run with it. You said something along the lines of this meaning crisis. We don't have a mental health crisis. Maybe we do. I don't think we always do. I think we have a crisis of meaning that cannot be repaired with a pill. It shouldn't be repaired with a pill. It can be improved with this understanding of that we're human beings trying to become better, greater. We're trying to improve. And that tension that we feel is okay. We should feel it. It makes life rich and meaningful. That the ups and downs, well, we have to have the downs to truly appreciate the peaks.
Yeah, I really like the language of becoming as well. And I remember listening to one of your podcasts, probably from a while back, where you phrased it something along the lines of the spirit is always seeking to become. And so it will create these experiences for us to grow. And I love that as such a solid reframe for challenging life. I know personally for myself, I'm so quick to label, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, I'm feeling stress. I'm feeling discontent. But maybe, with this different reframe, with this different approach around existential tension, the inner health intention, I can step back and say, oh, wait, maybe this is actually an inner calling to create change, to take self-responsibility and to actualize the possibilities that are around me, right? And that's what I love about logotherapy. For me, anyway, it has this empowering aspect to it because it connects us to our responsibility, I guess, and autonomy and agency in life.
Yes, I love that word empowering. It is so very empowering. It gives us back the responsibility for our life to make
Yeah.
the decisions to make it meaningful. You're so very right. And you make a beautiful point. One of my favorite authors of the past 10 years, Johann Hari, great TED Talks, but in his book, Lost Connections, he talks about his struggle with depression and the medications and things like that. But at the end, I believe it was the book and his TED Talk, he says, what if we use those emotions, those feelings of anxiety, of depression, of stress, or overwhelm, rather than treating them as illness and trying to medicate, what if we treated them as signals? And you
Yeah.
illustrated that perfectly. These aren't things to wish away. This is a signal. You use the word discontent. What a powerful emotion. I am discontent with where I am either right now in this moment. I'm discontent in this chair. I do not feel comfortable in this chair
I
right now.
know.
Right? What do we do? What do we do when we don't feel comfortable sitting in a chair? We move, right? What
Yeah.
should we do when we're discontent in life, when we don't feel comfortable in life? We should move. And I'm not saying move homes, but to do something, to take responsible action, to seek that which we are trying to become, that discontent, that anxiety. I love stress. Good stress is better, but negative stress is a motivator. We can't be feeling that all the time. But if you're feeling stress, why is that? And what do you need to do about it?
Mm.
Medicating it away with prescriptions or alcohol, marijuana, other drugs is not an answer, but addressing the stress head on, determining where it comes from, and taking responsible action is a cure for stress, but it's also an opportunity for growth. Stress can be a lovely thing. The human being can't deal with it all day, every day. But if we identify it and grow from it, it can be very powerful, as is all of these emotions that you just mentioned.
What are some practical ways people can navigate that inner tension in their everyday life?
Right. So when we feel that tension, when we recognize where we are and we know there's something, we may not know what it is we're called to become or that we want to become, but we know there's something. Practical strategies, sometimes just sitting in that liminal space and seeing where our spirit guides us, seeing where our internal compass got, where our experiences, our life takes us, right? That's kind of a passive way, but you can still be active in it. You can pray, meditate, take walks in nature. I had a lovely story, young man I've been working with for a while, was struggling. He felt that discontent. He said, I don't know what I want to do with my life, where I'm going. What I said, you know what? I want you to just take a hike out in nature, go for a walk. He did want to do that. He knew he wanted to take a hike. He's like, all right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab my backpack. I'm going to go do this 13-mile trail. And he did. I was not expecting this. He comes back and he says, I'm going to become a rock climber. I said, oh, what?
Wow.
Where did that come from? And he said, I got some shoes. There's a gym here with a rock climbing wall. It's far too cold to climb outside around here. Next time I talked to him, he said, I've been there a dozen times already. I've tried all of these paths and I'm really becoming a rock climber. And that came from out of nowhere. He was walking in nature, just looking around. That's a beautiful, again, prayer, meditation, walks in nature. There's something very powerful. But there's also active ways we can kind of guide ourselves, right? Books, podcasts, TED Talks, YouTube, conversations with other people, whether it's just a casual conversation with our close friends, our partners, our spouse, our family, or, more intentional conversations with a mentor, a coach, or a therapist. Sometimes, well, I'm going to give away a secret of therapy here. So sometimes when we just talk about something, I believe for many of us, the solution is in here somewhere. It's either in here or in here somewhere. And when we start to verbalize it, when we start to talk about it, or if we start to write about it, journal on it, very often the solution comes out. But there's a lot of ways to go about doing that, passive and active.
I love both of those. And I was just writing a few words as you were speaking. What I love about the passive ways is that I think it's something that's really easy to overlook in our current times because we're so busy and everything's so loud. I was doing some writing recently and it was there is that inner calling, but maybe we can't even hear it.
Yeah.
And so we're just going through our everyday with that inner tension or that discomfort or that discontent. And we're just suppressing, or like you said, numbing, alcohol. And it's but what if we actually just stepped back for a moment and moved into more that receptive state? Maybe there are things that can come through. That's what I really found with goal setting this year. It was initially it was really proactive and writing and this, but I hadn't actually taken the time to actually step back and listen to what maybe that spirit becoming was asking of me to do. And so I love that as a suggestion for people navigating, challenge or those feelings. And equally those active ones, friends, listening to podcasts. I really think also having mentors or therapists or practitioners to provide us guidance, because I also think that we don't often or always have the guidance and tools to know how to navigate the inner tension or listen to that voice. So in conversations like these are so helpful to support people with that.
Sometimes I'm a big believer in the truth of the hero's journey. I'm sure I speak about that often, that especially for men, because we can be a little hesitant sometimes. We can sometimes feel like we need to go do things it's manly to do it on our own. And to that, I say, no, it's not. our greatest heroes, myths and legends and real heroes throughout history have always had a mentor, right?
Mm,
The Greek tragedy, the flawed hero who goes on his journey and then runs into the wise old man. Or I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I always talk about Luke Skywalker and Yoda, right? Everybody needs their own Yoda in life, whether it's a therapist, a coach, or a little puppet in a backpack as you run, whatever it might be. Um,
mm,
we all benefit from that. So yes, to your point, I believe we all have it inside of us, but sometimes it takes somebody to pull it out, right? We may
mm.
have the solution inside us, in our spirit, in our mind, in our heart, but the right person at the right time with the right intervention, whether it's a question or an idea, many of us, can feel that blossom, that light bulb moment where we go, that's it. That's it. That's exactly.
It's interesting you mentioned the hero's journey because it's something I'm really interested in at the moment myself, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and just that as like an archetypal structure of transformation. And so I'm curious, and sorry, I hope this isn't like a curveball question, but do you see any overlay between logotherapy and the work you do and the hero's journey as this process of transformation?
Absolutely 100%. Yes. I speak about it often, especially in this kind of new realm I'm studying in psychedelic assisted therapy. We
Mm,
speak about the psychedelic journey and that it can be a hero's journey, that the medicine takes us along a path to help us see what we might need to do or where we might need to grow. But even in conventional, well, not just therapy, right? Not just, I'm a big believer in the hero's journey in conventional therapy, but just life, right? Life, going back to this idea of a meaningful life is a succession of responsible, meaningful choices, but it should be exciting too. It should be adventurous. We should do new things. We should be becoming, right? And that is the hero's journey. You were talking about this kind of this stagnation and how we sometimes the noise, we can't see where we're supposed to go or feel it. And I believe too often it's because we're busy exercising our thumbs on social media, just scrolling. It's rather than we just put that down and turn the TV off and again went for a walk in nature like the young man I was talking about, or did something, all of a sudden, just like every good myth and great story we've enjoyed, all of a sudden that path opens up and the adventure presents itself. Then we have a meaningful decision to make. Do I go on that adventure? Do I go back to the couch and hide?
Yeah, it's almost the visual I'm getting is like that existential tension is almost like the calling to say, hey, do you want to go on the adventure? Do you want to? And because you also mentioned being in the mystery and the unknown is part of that, the liminal space. It's almost like the inner tension is saying, hey, do you want to cross the threshold into the unknown and move through this journey? And hopefully on the other side, have your boon, have your
Right.
your triumph.
That's right. As the great Jordan Peterson says, slay the dragon, get the gold, right? But we don't always know what the dragon is, and there may not be gold. There might be a trap door of another adventure there. Who knows what it might be? But at
Yeah,
least I mean, every hero grows in that adventure, and we all deserve to be heroes in our own way in our own lives.
I really love that. And I think part of navigating that journey, navigating the journey of transformation, navigating the journey of suffering, navigating the journey of meaning, you kind of learn from it over time about which doors you want to open, which areas are worth the emotional and physical investment. And I think a big part of that, and I've heard you talk about it, is building resilience as a way to weather the storms well and suffer well, conduct the disharmony, you could say. I was wondering if you could also share ways that in our everyday we can build resilience and perhaps the link of resilience to living a meaningful life.
Absolutely. Resilience. Ooh, that is such a fun question. The link between resilience and a meaningful life. if we are living meaningfully, we're going on those adventures, we are becoming, we are making decisions to become different and better. And sometimes we fail. Sometimes life knocks us down. Sometimes we're hurt. And we need to have the resilience to bounce back up from that. And we can train to be more resilient. It's not some magical force that's up in the air that just comes, bites us in the neck, and now we're more resilient, but we have to train for it. And there's a variety of ways to do it. First, we try, we strive, we look for the path, we go on the adventure, and maybe we fail. Maybe our mentor smacks us on the hand and says, no, you did it wrong. Do it better, do it different. Learning from our failures is one path to resilience. I'm a big believer in just physical exercise, physical activity trains us to be mentally resilient. Whether it's running, as you had heard me say earlier, I gave up running and trade for a bicycle, but still there. Yeah, I pushed myself there just to feel that physically, to set that number and say, you know what, today's going to be 20 miles or 30 miles. And then to get there and recognize, well, there was some pain there, but I can do that. If I can do that, maybe I can do more difficult things in life. Like I tell the people I work with, my clients, I said, whether it's around the block or a mile or a 5K or a marathon, set the goal and take the steps to get there, because each step you take will teach you to be a little bit more resilient. Building a community around you, building a support, having that support network, so that when you do strive and inevitably you fail in some way, you have people around you to say, hey, I got you. I'll help you out, to lift you up and help you dust off, and to hold you accountable to get back in the race, to get back into the adventure. So community, exercise, and striving. There's volumes written on this. I really like the work of the late, great Stephen Southwick. I got a chance to meet him years ago at a Logotherapy conference, and he interviewed military special forces, survivors of natural disasters and terrorism, and he put together, I believe, it was 9 or 10 factors, and these were just 3 of them. But there are ways that we can get up every morning and practice resilience. One last big one, again, because I'm gonna beat up on our smartphones again, to stop the scrolling and to do things that excite and ignite our brain, whether that's thinking puzzles or board games with family members, reading difficult books, things that light our brain up. For me, one of my favorite moments of the past year, I could feel my brain grow. I'm not kidding. My brain grew in this moment, and it hurt. I had finally decided, after years of watching YouTube videos, to try to learn how to play the guitar. I said, I'm going to get a teacher and I'm going to go learn how to do this. And I was sitting there with my teacher. He can only tolerate me for 30 minutes a week, right? And that's probably all my brain can tolerate, is 30 minutes a week. And then he says, go home and practice. And there was one day he was teaching me something. It was either a chord or a pattern, and teaching me about music theory and why this sounded good and that didn't, and don't do this. And I sat there and he said, now, do you understand? And I looked at him, I said, no, I don't. And let me try it again. And he explained it in a different way. And then I did something, and literally I felt my brain light up. Like, oh, there was a new connection just made there. I got it. Even at my ripe old age, I was like, I got it. My brain just grew. And he kind of giggled a bit. And, but then I was able to do things differently, and I understood things differently. So rather than, literally, I spent 5 years watching YouTube videos and didn't learn a darn thing. In a couple months, a few hours with another human being that saw me for who I am and what my ability was, I've become pretty halfway decent at it. But the important thing is, I've developed cognitive resilience. My brain can actually grow and learn new things. And we know, human beings, as we age, we may struggle to do that. Our brain loses its neuroplasticity. But when we challenge it, when we nourish it with healthy food, and when we challenge it with innovative activities, when we challenge it to learn instead of to scroll, we maintain some of that neuroplasticity, some of that opportunity to grow throughout life, some of that opportunity to continue to discover meaning.
I really love that. It's again returning to what we were talking about at the very beginning of those everyday practices. And I almost see what you're sharing of building resilience is almost engaging with maybe micro challenges. They're not the ones that completely throw you off your feet and destabilize you. But like whether it is getting on the bike for 30 minutes and putting on some music and pumping it out, that's like engaging in a challenge and building your capacity to meet that. Maybe you don't know like how fast you're going to get that time, but yeah, it's engaging with the mystery and the challenge in a maybe a more gentle way.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm kind of smiling and giggling here because literally I think of the most meaningful challenge I have in my week right now, and it is learning to move my pinky finger from this string like to that string without making it sound terrible. And I've been working on it for a really long time, and it hasn't, but it's meaningful because I know when I finally get it, something's going to work there. It doesn't even have to be 30 minutes on the bike. It could be learning to move your pinky finger from one
Yeah.
string to another in a musical way. Our days are full of those opportunities. But as I said in the beginning, I believe we live in a time where companies are trying to continue to convince us to consume so they can continue to profit and grow in ways that rob us of meaning. And we have to see that and do something different.
Yeah. And what I love about that as well is this idea of maybe these companies robbing us is that the self-responsibility piece is claiming that back. It's like the reclaiming of our agency and our choice. And I just really love that visual you just gave me. And I can see how that really supports us engage with and extract and create the meaning in our life.
And not to, I don't want to be the anti-capitalist corporate person, right? And raging against the mission. But I want to mention there are good companies out there trying to do good work to fill our minds with positive things too. One of the meaningful things we can do that I enjoy doing is finding those groups, those organizations, those people, those products and supporting them and allowing them to help me grow, but to consciously choose, I want to support a community or an activity or a product that helps me, but also helps others. That can be very meaningful as well.
And that's actually what I'm really excited about. I've shared this with you around the Tattoo Pathway community that's coming up. It's actually tied through a lot of the threads we've talked about. It's got that coming together piece. It's learning together. It's witnessing one another. It's sharing. And I guess it's like grounding the individual experience in something a bit more collective. I think there's a lot of meaning in that as well.
I love that word. That word collective, such a powerful word. I could bore you with reams and reams of research, but just my own intuition and the work that I do. We are starved for community in our world. We are starved for true interaction. Why else would somebody get up at 4:00 in the morning to talk to somebody else halfway across the world, right? Because we are wired for this. We need this in so many ways. And so I'm excited for your community, and I'm excited to see the people that you bring together under that. I think it's such wonderful and meaningful work.
Thank you. Me too. And I guess just on the key theme word today of meaning, what's, if any, a message you would like to leave with people around meaning?
Wow, ooh, so many in such a short amount of time I've thrown out there. How can I someone off? Be self-transcendent. There we go. As I end my podcast, I'll share this on your podcast. I challenge, I encourage, I hope people go out there and live their lives with meaning, purpose, and resilience. We've touched each one of those today and given so many ways to do that. And if you have questions about what that means, hop on over to the Tattoo Pathway community. Listen to more podcasts. Read Man's Search for Meaning. There are so many ways. But to choose, take responsible action and live life with meaning, purpose, and resilience. And when you do that, you'll impact all of those around you. You'll impact your family, which will impact your community, which can't help but impact the world.
Thank you. That's a really strong way to end. And I'd like to add for our listeners to also head over to your podcast, The Meaning Project. I have found, as I was sharing with you before we started recording, like I've listened to something like 20 hours, and it's just constantly giving me guidance and goodness and practical steps and that cognitive stretching, things to chew on and think about and contemplate. And, it's it's really meaningful. And so I also recommend people head over and listen to that as well to support them on their journey of meaning and navigating life.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you as well so much for joining us today as well and giving your time and sharing your wisdom.
It's been my pleasure.
A big thank you to Dr. Daniel Franz and Taylor for taking the time and the effort to put this conversation together and make it available to us. All the links associated with Dr. Daniel's work and with the Tattoo Pathway are found below. Tattoo Pathway's community circle has closed its enrollment for the first quarter. We kicked off at the start of this month with an in-person event, which was lots of fun. And we've also begun our online calendar. So if you want to get involved with Tattoo Pathway's community, our next onboarding will be in about 3 months. In the meantime, you can enjoy the podcast. You can also watch the videos on YouTube, and I'll catch you next episode.